If you've ever been told that anxiety is about fear, that you're afraid of failure or rejection or the future, I want you to hold that thought loosely for a moment. Because what I'm about to say may sound simple, but it changes how anxiety actually works. Anxiety isn't a fear problem. It's a timing problem. And once you see it that way, a lot of things suddenly make sense. Why capable people feel anxious, even when nothing is wrong. Why reassurance doesn't help. Why logic doesn't calm it down. Why success doesn't remove it. And most importantly, why traditional approaches don't fix it. Let me start here. Most people experiencing anxiety are not irrational. They're not weak. They're not broken. In fact, many of them are highly capable, intelligent, and driven people. They know how to think. They know what to do. They know how to plan, and they know how to perform, which is exactly why anxiety or stress is so confusing. Because it doesn't show up as panic. It shows up as overthinking, second-guessing yourself, that mental noise that never stops, urgency without clarity of what to do, that feeling of pressure and stress without a clear threat. And that is the clue. If anxiety were truly about fear, you'd expect it to disappear once the threat is gone. But it doesn't. Here's what's actually happening. Your nervous system is operating in two different time zones at once. Part of you is here in the present, reading this, listening to this, living your life. And another part of you is already in the future, anticipating outcomes, looking at consequences, trying to figure out reactions and play through scenarios. Not imagining them casually, but pre-living them emotionally. Your body doesn't experience time the way your mind does. It doesn't know this hasn't happened yet. It only knows I'm experiencing this now. So, when your system is repeatedly living in a future moment emotionally, it creates tension without resolution. And that tension is what we label as anxiety. This is why anxiety doesn't respond to logic. You can tell yourself, I'm fine, there's no real threat, I've handled worse, everything will be okay, and none of it sticks. Why? Because the issue isn't what you think. It's when your nervous system thinks it. Anxiety is what happens when the body is pulled forward in time while the mind is trying to stay present. That split creates friction, and friction creates stress. Here's something most people miss. The more capable you are, the more likely you are to experience this kind of anxiety, because high performers anticipate outcomes quickly. They see consequences early. They think several moves ahead, and they feel responsible for results. That's not a flaw, it's a strength. But when the emotional system doesn't reset, that forward projection becomes chronic. You're no longer planning. You're living ahead of yourself. And your nervous system never gets to land. This is also why common advice falls flat. Just breathe, be present, think positive, reframe the thought, take a walk, have a cup of coffee. Those approaches assume anxiety is happening in the mind, but it's not. By the time you're aware of it, your body has already reacted. Remember, emotion precedes thought. We learned this 30 years ago. So trying to reason your way out of a timing problem is like arguing with a smoke alarm instead of putting out the fire. The real solution isn't eliminating fear. It's bringing your nervous system back into the same moment your body is actually in. And when timing realigns, anxiety will naturally dissolve. Not because you fixed yourself, but because the tension no longer has fuel. And this is why emotional regulation tools work when mindset tools don't. They don't debate the future. They release the emotional charge that pulled the system forward in the first place. And once that charge clears, clarity returns. Decision-making improves, the mental noise quiets, urgency softens. Not because your life changed, but because the timing did. So if anxiety has ever made you question yourself, your competence, your confidence, your capacity, I want you to hear this really clearly. You're not afraid. You're ahead of yourself. And that is fixable. When you stop trying to think your way out and instead reset the emotional timing underneath it, everything starts to feel easier. Not because you lowered the bar, but because your system finally came back home to now.